much has been said, including on this channel, about you know, parts of the right becoming kind of popular with parts of the left, specifically the Young Turks. The Young Turks have gone all in with the split on the right and taking a side on of that split because there's a side that they really see as ideologically theirs, which it is, and that is the anti-Semitic side. So there's so much to say about the Young Turks, and I think we're going to say a lot. I think we're going to do more about them than we've done so far. But Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are now two of their favorite people on the planet, it looks like, and today we're going to talk about a video that Anna Kasparian did in response to a email newsletter that Tucker Carlson sent, just asking the question, would the world be a safer place if Iran had nuclear weapons? Just asking the question and also answering it with a resounding yes. Anna went a bit more academic in her explanation of why it would be such a great thing. And we're going to hear that. Welcome to the reality show. I'm Razi Ginsburg, joined by Stuart Margolis, Daniel Kraus. Stuart, your general thoughts on this before we start playing the clip?
Um, I mean, my first thought before even hearing it, just the topic was, is Tucker insane? Which the answer is yes. Is she insane? And we'll get into it. But yeah, I mean, it just on its face, it just seems like such a bizarre question to ask. But we'll get into why. But yeah, that was my initial thought. Is could any sane person think this?
Yeah, bizarre question to ask and absolutely amazing answer to give to that question. Daniel.
Yeah, I would only like add a little bit of like volitional clarification, because recently we talked about we talked about Kanye West, who is actually bipolar, who is insane, and whose views in the past could be explained from the fact that he's actually not in touch with reality. Both Tucker Carlson and Anna Kasparian, as far as we know, are in touch with reality and are still believing these insane things.
Let me just jump in. I think there's definitely room for dispute on that with Tucker Carlson. I mean, didn't he say that he was visited by a demon in the middle of the night? I mean, that sounds like a hallucination. That sounds pretty insane to me. But
Oh, I
yeah.
don't think Tucker is insane. I think he sees his job as getting views and the journey doesn't matter, only the destination.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even there, I would even throw in sort of where evolution actually plays a role, because one of my favorite characters in a show it is in a world which isn't like a real world in that show, like encounters like insane things that cannot be explained. His answer to this, he committed himself into like a psych ward because he couldn't explain things and he thought he was crazy. If Tucker thinks he's visited by demons, a proper action is committing yourself to a facility and trying to solve those issues because you are not in touch with reality, not make a podcast and talk about all those things. So even if he is insane, unlike Ye, he is not seeking any treatment for his insanity, which I think is moral culpability.
Yeah, and by the way, years ago, I remember during a show about Candace Owens, I brought up, should we stop doing shows about her because she actually sounds insane? And we decided to still do shows about her. With Tucker, I've never had that issue. With Kanye, we did have that issue when we stopped doing shows about him because it was clear that he is not all there. Anyway, yeah, hang on. Frank says, Dan, Anna said that Miss Rachel is a national treasure. Did she say which nation? Anyway, let's play the clip.
Tucker Carlson's recent newsletter asks a pretty provocative question that's sure to draw the wrath of Mark Levin and the rest of the neocon establishment. which means I'm all over it. I love it. I want to talk about it. So his latest morning newsletter is titled, "Could a Nuclear Iran Stabilize the Middle East?" And you should know that privately I've been raising this question, because there is a political theory in the world of political science known as the political peace theory, and we're going to visit that and discuss it in just a moment. But first, I want to kind of go through the arguments made in this newsletter, and you can decide for yourselves if you think it makes any sense. So, Tucker Carlson notes that there are all sorts of countries now that have nuclear weapons, right? Unhinged genocidal regimes, for instance, like Israel. Now they have a clandestine nuclear program that they have not entered into the non-proliferation treaty because they're above the law, and apparently we operate in a global double standard where they get to do whatever they want. Their treachery is never punished.
Yeah, this is a good place to pause. Yeah, of course, when Anna says, yeah, various countries have nuclear weapons, you know which country she's going to go to first, because you know it's the only country she ever talks about in negative terms. But it still is interesting. She throws all this stuff in there. She doesn't talk about a country where she would get executed for that video, even if it had no content, because she's showing her hair. She didn't talk about the country that has a nuclear weapon and a few days ago executed teenagers because they watched the South Korean show Squid Games. Like those aren't mentioned. And by the way, I want to point out, this is not the same argument as people say. People say, "Oh, you were protesting about all the deaths in Gaza, but you're silent about Iran." No, people who are protesting about the deaths in Gaza and silent about Iran are perfectly consistent. They're on the side of the murderers in Gaza, and they're on the side of the murderers in Tehran. But in her case, so she is more consistent than those people. But it is interesting to see, how she still actually tries to use language where she pretends she is on the side of the humans while advocating for the most oppressive regimes in the world. Stuart.
Yeah, it's the usual double standard. Yeah, Israel, she just offers offhandedly, well, of course, they're genocidal, insane, but offers no criticism of, like you said, the many other regimes that are that like would kill her instantly for just appearing in public the way she does. But it's the usual double standard. That's I think we can always expect that from people like her.
Yeah, again, I don't think it's a double. I think the lies are when she talks about, things like genocide as if she's supposedly against it, when we know she is in favor of it, because she's in favor of, or these people pretending to be anti-war, when they always advocate for the side that started the war and against the side that's defending itself. So they are consistent. They're just not honest in what they claim to be in favor of and against. Daniel.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't mean to psychologize, and then is psychologized. What is it with these people when they start with like, Anna was like, "Oh, this thing, it will piss people off," and the same thing happened when I watched Cenk Uygur and Tucker Carlson, and Tucker was like, "Oh yeah, you being here, that will piss people off." What is it with like psychology of people who like are so obsessed with like pissing people off? Maybe that's just my thing, but like I never, like, when I learn about something or when I discover something new, my first reaction is never, "Oh, who can I annoy with this one? Who can I like try to target with this one?" It's like, okay, I found something true. I found something nice. I like it flourished my own understanding on my own life, or I can help some other people with better understanding. But that's just me psychologizing. Let's go to what she actually
I do
said.
want to say it is consistent if you like pissing people off and are also in favor of people who start wars. Like, that's a consistent view of me versus the world, kind of that kind of approach. But all right.
But yeah, going into things she actually said, you have to laugh how she said, unhinged genocidal regimes that have nuclear weapons, like Israel, like she had to throw that in. And then she brought up that Israel is like outside of the legal moral standard or whatever, because it's not part of the non-proliferation of nuclear arms treaty, which I don't know how that is like being above the law, that you don't sign up to a treaty you don't agree with. That's being above the law. But by the way, do you know who else is not like signatory to the treaty that also has nuclear weapons? Pakistan, India, North Korea, and South Sudan, apparently. I don't know why, but South Sudan doesn't have nuclear arms. But North Korea, India, and Pakistan have nuclear arms, and none of those are like signatories to like treaty. But of course, we we don't care about those. It's only Israel that we really care about, because that's the only regime we care about. And not to mention, I don't mean to use this as like some weapon against those other countries, or say like I don't necessarily like most of the international treaties. I don't think there's like any significant like reason for them to exist. But even then, when it comes to like being consistent with it, do you know who is? Because Israel is not breaking the non-proliferation of nuclear arms treaty, because it's not a signatory, and to some extent it allows the International Atomic Energy Association agency. International Atomic Energy Agency. It allows them to actually review some of the nuclear development inside of Israel. So the agency itself doesn't actually have any problems with Israel. Do we know who they have problems with? Iran, because Iran is developing nuclear weapons despite being a signatory to the non-proliferation treaty, is actually developing nuclear weapons and has actually been sanctioned because of that. So, funnily enough, this treaty Anna holds in dear so much. The country that is actually violating is Iran, the country that she's advocating for to have nuclear arms.
I mean, when you talk about international law and then you talk about people being above the law, you really can get away with everything, because international law is opt-in, and it's opt-in not as a grand thing, it's opt-in piece by piece. So, they didn't opt in for this piece of, the supposed law that, also doesn't really have any enforcement mechanism. But it's international law. We can throw out there whatever we want and, prove us wrong. Morana?
Yeah, somebody
Stuart,
somebody says in the chat, this is probably the only time where Anna is pro Second Amendment when it comes to Iran having nuclear weapons, which I think I found pretty funny. Which once we start like using law in that way, might as well.
Yeah, international constitutional law. Stuart.
No, let's go ahead and continue with the clip.
But there are other countries like North Korea, for instance. North Korea has nuclear weapons and has had nuclear weapons since about 2006. Is anyone up at night, or rocking themselves in fetal position in bed every night over North Korea using a nuclear weapon against us? No. And that's kind of the point that was made in this newsletter. So Tucker cites warnings that presidents and cabinet members gave in the early 2000s about how Kim Jong-il, so that's Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, if he obtains a nuclear weapon, it's so dangerous, the world's gonna end. Well, that included William Perry, who happened to be Bill Clinton's defense secretary. And here's what he said in 2003, 3 years prior to North Korea obtaining a nuclear weapon. The nuclear program now underway in North Korea poses an imminent danger of nuclear weapons being detonated in American cities, detonated, okay? So just simply having access to the nuclear weapons, North Koreans, they're so barbaric that they'll immediately use it against American cities. Okay. Now, Tucker writes that those warnings sound pretty scary, right? But the past 20 years have proven them unwarranted. North Korea became a known nuclear nation in October of 2006, and its proliferation has yielded a total of 0 nuclear strikes on America, the West, or any other country. The fear-mongering was for nothing. Well, if the political establishment in the United States isn't engaging in fear-mongering, what else would they do? I mean, yes, fundraising, I get that. But other than that, literally, what else would they do with their time? So Tucker then connects that history with the very similar warnings that we are hearing today, especially in regard to Iran, from people like Benjamin Netanyahu, who says that there is only one difference between Nazi Germany and Israel. Nazi Germany and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is first seeking atomic weapons, and once it has them, will then start a world war. But Tucker asks America's leaders, to maybe consider some, important questions before engaging in a regime change war with Iran in order to prevent them from accessing or obtaining nuclear weapons. First, he asks, what are the chances Iran would actually launch a nuclear attack? And I think that's a legitimate question, of course. But he argues it's unlikely. No country in the so-called axis of evil, that's Iraq, Iran, and North Korea, has ever deployed a nuke because doing so would be an act of suicide.
Okay, let's pause here just for a second, because by the way, what are the chances of Iran using a nuke? And then you pull the answer unlikely completely out of your ass, because Iran, as their official slogan since day one and for the past 47 years has been death to America, death to Israel. And they're building a nuclear weapon. And by the way, they elaborate on the death to Israel part often, saying we will wipe Israel off the map. So basically the claim by Tucker is we should assume that what they are saying is not at all what they mean, and all they want is to defend themselves from a country that has zero interest in them except, not dying as they say that they will do. Stuart.
I mean, there's so much context that she's dropping here. The reality is that the whole Islamic fundamentalist program is for world domination, and death is not something that is a preventative, their own death. I mean, they, in the pursuit of a worldwide caliphate, a glorious death is considered, that's like the best you can do. So her concept that, oh, well, they wouldn't do it because that would be suicide. They are the suicide bomber people. They, suicide for them in their cause is the best way to go. So why would you assume, when we've seen multiple times that there are individuals willing to commit suicide for the cause, why would you think that the nation wouldn't? Why? I mean, when they, like you said, their slogan for 50 years is death to America. Their goals have never wavered in that whole time. I'm sure there are people in the regime that have some modicum of self-preservation, but can we count on that when we know that the religious nuts are behind the whole thing? I wouldn't want to stake my survival on that.
Yeah, and by the way, the question, if they glorify death and just or suicide bombers as individuals, why wouldn't they as a state? Is actually answered by somebody Anna quotes later on in what I think is a pretty amazing part of this video. This whole video I found pretty amazing. So we will get to that. And spoiler, the answer is not convincing. Daniel.
Well, I'll only. Well, what did you say again? Yeah, well, first about North Korea specifically. Even after they acquired nuclear weapons, it's not like there was peace. They are still, like, South Koreans have died from North Korean aggression, including like attacks on different ships or sites. They send missiles into both South Korean and Japanese waters, continuously posturing, and they can do that because they have nuclear arsenal. They are able to get away with it. Separately, I hate when people talk about like nuclear arms as if the only problem with acquiring nuclear weapons is that they might use nuclear weapons. The problem with acquiring nuclear weapons is at that point, it's pretty much impossible to actually fight them. You cannot fight them head on because of the possibility of using nuclear arms. If Iran had nuclear arms, that would mean they would pretty much get to do whatever they want, and the West couldn't really retaliate. Or rather, I think it could, but it wouldn't, because we refuse to do anything to nuclear arms. We refuse to do anything about Russia. We refuse to do anything about China. We refuse to do anything about Iran directly. It's only indirectly that we even try to do something. So I think even if they didn't use it, which we can talk about the chances of that. Even having that is a problem. Not to mention Iran, and I like to always mention this example. Iran is on the way to basically disintegrate. When it came to the Soviet Union, when Soviet Union disintegrated, it had a lot of chaos, and one of the problems was what will happen to the nuclear arsenal. Because of that, the Western powers actually came in and supported the Russian state and supported all the other breakaway republics. Basically, one, to not them completely fall apart into a civil war, and to preserve the nuclear sites. So technically, you could say the current Putin's regime is here because the West has preserved the Russia as it was back then. And that happened because they had nuclear arms. What happens if Iran has nuclear weapons and they start disintegrating? A bunch of breakaway regions start happening, a bunch of protests start happening, and then we would have to save the Ayatollah regime so the nuclear weapons wouldn't go to some even crazier people. This is the problem with Iran acquiring nuclear weapons, is the fact that it will most likely put us in a terrible position where we have to save a freaking IRGC Ayatollah regime because the alternative would be so much worse. Which the alternative would be, some ISIS group getting hold of nuclear weapons, possibly.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, will you be sad when Starmer leaves number 10 shortly once he resigns? I'm already crying on the inside about the loss of this great leader. No, look, I don't think I'm going to be celebrating because whoever is next is going to be some horrible person from Labor. And then we have to wait 4 years until we maybe get somebody slightly less horrible, but also still very bad. So yeah, another quick point that it's interesting when the Tuckers of the world say something, it's like they think, okay, how am I going to say it in just a way that is at least somehow somewhat dishonest? Like, and here he talks about the axis of evil hasn't deployed a nuclear weapon in the last 20 years or whatever. First of all, and he mentions, the axis of evil. George W. Bush named Iraq, Iran, and North Korea as the axis of evil in the State of the Union, maybe 2002 or 2003. I don't remember, but back then. And then removed the Iraqi regime, and so Iraq couldn't do that because of that. The axis of evil, the Iraqi part of the axis of evil was Saddam. He was removed right away. Iran does not have nuclear weapons as far as we know, so it's kind of difficult to deploy them when you don't have them. So we're just talking about North Korea, which, yeah. So in the past 20 years, North Korea has not decided to use a nuclear weapon. That is what Tucker wanted to say, but said the way he said it. For reasons.
Yeah, I mean, call it for what it is. She's basically an anti-vaxxer on like nuclear arms. It's like, oh, nobody has in the past decades died from polio. It's like, yeah, because we like developed the whole vaccine. We like had a complete health studies committed to this for like a decade to eradicate this thing. Yeah, nobody used weapons of mass destruction since pretty much America used it, because that was the goal. We didn't want anybody to use them. So we tried to prevent anybody from either acquiring nuclear weapons, or when they had some weapons of mass destruction, to prevent them from actually using it, to destroy them before they had a chance to deploy them. So yeah, she's basically like anti-vaxxer for nuclear arms.
Stuart?
No, we can continue.
Okay, let me just quickly say, yeah, Paul says Mandelson has mentioned 5,642 pages of the Epstein files. It's not just the number of mentions, it's also the quality of them. Yeah, I would be very surprised if Starmer survives this, but I do expect the Labor Party to remain in power. They're not going to call an election when they're like fourth in the polls. So, yeah. All right. Back to
by the way, I have a picture of myself at the site because the new Epstein files were released. I have a picture of myself at the same spot where Epstein was with one of the Slovak politicians or diplomats rather, sometimes in the past. So, oh yeah, and a town like 1 hour away from me was mentioned in the Epstein files.
Well, on the Daily Objective, you were bragging about having a picture with Sargon, so this just keeps getting better and better. Can't wait to hear about more pictures tomorrow, but let's hear from Anna.
mutually assured destruction, right? You launch a nuke, there will be retaliation from another nuclear power, and the world ends. Like, it's just Armageddon. And it's not, of course, Western countries only that have nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons, North Korea has nuclear weapons. I'm not up at night worrying about them. But there is one thing that nuclear weapons have afforded the countries who have managed to obtain them. And that tends to be the US leaving them alone for the most part. So the next controversial question he asked
Okay, let's
is,
pause before the next controversial question. So yeah, the countries, again, you choose what you say, okay? She chooses the words that come out of her mouth, and she chose to say the countries that she's not worried about are Pakistan and North Korea. And she then says, look, the reason countries need nukes is for the US to leave them alone. I mean, Anna specifically has a very special hatred for the Jews, but it's not just the Jews. It is all the humans, wherever they are, which is why she looks at oppressive regimes as kind of the hope for a future that's more along the lines of Anna's values. Stuart.
I mean, her hatred of the U.S. comes through very clearly in this clip. She makes it sound like the U.S. is the problem here, and certainly we have many problems in the U.S. I'm not saying that we don't, and but the idea that Pakistan, for example, needs to be protected from the U.S. It's just it's absurd, and it's very similar to the way she demonizes Israel. The countries that are actually better, not necessarily good, but better on the world stage, are the ones that she takes the time to point out and vilify, and the worst of the worst she shrugs off.
Daniel.
So first I would ask her, so she said a nuclear country wouldn't strike another country because it would retaliate. Would it? Iran took American hostages. Iran is funding terrorist organizations in the region, killing Americans, murdering Americans, attacking international shipping, attacking Israel directly. Did Anna ever call for retaliation against Iran? Russia is, hacking infrastructure in America, getting involved in American elections, killing people on UK land. Is Anna calling for any retaliations to Russia? Let's say Iran nukes Tel Aviv. Oh no, even better. Let's say Iran nukes empty field or empty mountain in Golan Heights. Would Anna call for retaliation? No, these people never call for retaliation. So and even then, broadly, would even an American administration? Let's say there are Russian soldiers march into Estonia. Will NATO respond? We don't know. We have no confirmation of it. What happened when Russian soldiers march into Crimea? We kind of shrugged and let them get away with it. What about when they invaded the rest of Ukraine? We still put limits on Ukraine when it comes to engaging with Russia. So where is even this coming from that we would respond? No. The Med doctrine is dead because we don't know if the Western countries would actually retaliate with nuclear weapons. Any idea of the nuclear, the idea of peace when it comes to nuclear weapons isn't there because the West isn't willing to actually retaliate when it comes to aggression from these either terrorist states or dictatorships or anything else. So no, this falls apart. And even then, let's say Iran or North Korea or Russia nukes America. Would Anna call for them or us nuking back? Or would you say, it's just one city, we shouldn't have world war because only New York got obliterated, so it's just one nuclear weapon. Should we really respond back? I have a feeling that maybe somebody should ask Anna straight up if because so far from what we know, she never calls for retaliation. She always blames us, right? So if Iran drops a nuke on New York, well, we shouldn't be in Middle East. They are only trying to defend themselves.
Well, yeah, and New York is full of Jews, so maybe it was for the best.
It's only targeting the Zionists, and collateral damage is okay on our side.
Morana?
Could Iran obtaining the bomb wind up being a good thing? Whether anyone in the foreign policy establishment admits it, North Korea's nuclearization has undeniably stabilized the Korean peninsula. The region has seen no wars, coups, or interventionist forced regime changes since 2006.
Pause, and leave that up there because I need to. People, again, there's a choice in how to word things. The region has seen no wars, coups, or interventionist forced regime changes since 2006. Has there been any regime change in the Korean peninsula since the 50s? I don't think so. Yeah, Daniel, you can take down the quote. We've seen enough of Tucker's mind. Stuart.
Yeah, I mean that's just so dishonest and so beside the point, really. I mean, yeah, I mean, almost 20 years is not really very long in geopolitical terms anyway. There's, most of the world's countries have not seen that regime change or, whatever in the past 20 years. Things thankfully are a little more stable than that. It's just a kind of an absurd non sequitur. Like if North Korea hadn't gotten the bomb, would that situation be any different? I doubt it.
Yeah, exactly. He is attributing something that has been the case in the Korean Peninsula for what was the case for 50 years before that, and is the case in most places around the world. He's actually attributing to the fact that North Korea has nuclear weapons, which again brings us back to what these people are advocating for. They're advocating for nuclear weapons just in the hands of the world's worst totalitarian regimes. And all of this, again, is as a counterbalance to the Jewish state, which for these people should not exist, and the United States of America, which they might not say this, but also they do not want it to exist as it is.
Yeah, and also Israel maybe has or maybe hasn't had a nuclear weapon since what, the 60s, the 70s? And we haven't seen any war in the region since then. Shouldn't that also apply? Like, shouldn't Egypt be shouldn't, well, technically it depends when, but shouldn't have Egypt been scared about doing something to I think it was in the 70s, so that wouldn't apply. But let's say Hamas, shouldn't Hamas be scared to doing something to Israel, or Hezbollah, Lebanon, or Syria? Iran itself,
Or
right?
Iran.
Shouldn't Iran be scared to do something to Israel?
First of all, there was a war with Egypt after Israel
Yeah.
allegedly got nukes in 1973, and that was probably a good time to use one because Israel, yeah, ended up surviving that
But
war.
yeah, and that was the time where actually that was the most likely that if Israel would have used it, that's when they would have used it.
Yeah, and again, I think they should have used it because there was a real danger that, yeah, was averted without nuclear weapons, but they didn't know that that would be the case. And yeah, and America, took its time because, Henry Kissinger was a person who liked, giving lessons to allies. So anyway, anything else, or should we go back to the clip?
And he asks, would Iran becoming a nuclear power have the same effect on its region? Could it finally prompt America to leave the area alone and incentivize Israel to drop its stated goal of controlling the Gaza Strip and the West Bank? Would it make the Iranian government less oppressive because it wouldn't have to worry about the West's constant decapitation ambitions?
All right, let's pause. Please keep this up there, or please rewind and get it back up there. Look. Yeah, you thought the previous one was out there. Yeah, let me read this again because it is special. Would it make Iran having a nuclear weapon, make the Iranian government less oppressive because it wouldn't have to worry about the West's constant decapitation ambitions. Okay, you can get rid of that. I just want to point out this video is 11 days old, right? So it's a couple of weeks after Iran committed what may have been the biggest massacre of protesters in history, according to some reports out there, and we're not the BBC repeating Gaza Health Ministry, so we don't actually know. But if you look at the reports, according to some, more people were slaughtered by the Iranian regime in those 2 days than were killed in Nagasaki by a nuclear weapon. Iran is mass murdering its own citizens, and in some cases, considering what life is like in Iran, this is something that for those citizens is worth putting their life on the line to just stop the horror that is everyday life under such an oppressive regime that again, Tucker Carlson of the so-called right and a Kasparian of the so-called left are united in wanting to see that regime that slaughtered tens of thousands of its own citizens less than a month ago stronger than it is, to ensure that it is not removed, to ensure that the oppression doesn't stop, and of course to ensure the most important thing, which is the constant stream of money and weapons keeps flowing to anybody who is targeting the Jews. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraqi militias, whoever is waiting for their turn in Jordan. Yeah, Stuart.
And not just the Jews. Really, Western civilization is the target. It's just appalling to me that anyone could be so just openly, blatantly evil. To maintain that the problem that with Iran is the fear of the U.S. That's the only problem there. I mean, it's just monstrous. It's just horrific, and I don't know how she can say it with a straight face. It's really bizarre to me.
Gigi Ryder says Anna is high IQ, but tortured, twisted logic on purpose. Wait till we're gonna get to something really special when she goes like academic on us, and stay tuned. Daniel.
Let me just remind people that the Young Turks are actually live right now with 97 viewers live. So make sure to share this live stream because we might get ahead of the Young Turks live stream as of current. So if you want to see us doing better than the Young Turks, make sure to share the live stream and let people know.
And then we can go on Megyn Kelly on them and say, look, we have more views, but I don't think so.
So, I mean, what are you supposed to say? Like, imagine the Mullah or the Ayatollah or whoever, IRGC commander, like going to the prisoner and like, let me apologize to all of you, but the West is being aggressive towards us, so we have to be oppressive. We have to kill you all because the West is coming. This is more like Arabic accent. I shouldn't do that. I don't know how to do like Farsi accent. But it's ridiculous. The idea that. And she did the same thing when she was on Bill Maher, right? She was asked like the city she would be most feel the safest, and she couldn't say, of course, any of the Arab cities. She could only say Israeli city, but she of course couldn't say Israeli city because that would mean that Israel is actually more respective of individual rights than any other country in the region by a huge margin. But then she was like, well, what are they supposed to do? It's the West is continuously like interfering with them, so they have no choice but to be oppressive, have no individual-based justice system, have no absolute understanding of individual rights, no actual understanding of democratic processes. Even the countries that have actual elections, they don't really understand what is the purpose of elections, and they don't really result in anything serious. I mean, Iran has elections, right? It's like it's pointless because they don't really understand or are purposely evading the reasons why specific countries have elections, why the election systems are set up in specific ways, and what is the alleged goal. But of course, it's blame the West first. Everything is a white man's problem. Every single thing around the world.
All right, Morano.
Have to worry about the West's constant decapitation ambitions? I think that's a legitimate question. I'll give you another example. I mean, why is it that the US isn't allowing Ukraine to go balls to the wall in regard to Russia? Well, because it's a delicate matter. Russia has nuclear weapons, which it has threatened to use time and time again. Now, do I think Russia's actually going to use nuclear weapons? Honestly, I don't. But it has kind of restrained the US. And I think in certain instances, especially when you have a president who's drunk off military power, as Trump is at the moment, you want to have some brakes on the car. And I actually do think Iran having nuclear weapons would prevent the US from invading and pushing for a regime change, not for us, obviously, but on behalf of Israel.
All right,
And
I want to go back to that Ukraine example. This is a thing that I was thinking.
Because I have because something I mentioned earlier.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
okay, listen to what she says. Ukraine cannot go strongly on Russia because Russia has nuclear weapons. I'm wondering what is the comparison we could draw with Iran when it comes to actually targeting dictatorships and not being able to because they have nuclear weapons.
This is such an amazing confession of where she actually stands, because again, her idea isn't that there's going to be mutually assured destruction, and it's specifically mutually assured destruction, as in the West can't act against dictatorships. And she gives this example of what happens when such dictatorships go after countries that aren't the U.S. and that aren't Israel and that don't have nuclear weapons, like Ukraine. Are you a free, semi-free country that doesn't have nuclear weapons, that has a nuclear armed dictatorship on your border? Well, too bad. Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of this is that I don't think that is the fundamental of why the U.S. has not supported Ukraine. I think it's much worse than that. I think it's this. Well, the current administration admires Putin. Their whole foreign policy is might makes right, and Russia's got force on its side, so they should be allowed to just do what they want. It's not fear of Russia's nuclear weapons that is holding us back. It's that ideology. But she doesn't care about any of that.
Yeah, I just have to reply to this person in the chat who's defending Iran and saying, look, they've changed I think you mean presidents, unless they have a prime minister as well. But the president, first of all, no, the president doesn't actually do much either. That's the thing. Yeah, Iran has elections, but it's not like you can run on a platform of removing death to America, death to Israel from the official slogan, because if you even suggest that, you will be executed as a traitor just for suggesting it. So it's actually, here are a bunch of people who will all bow down to Khamenei and do whatever he says. And who do you want, executing the policy that has already been set and is the same policy for the past 47 years? So yeah. And by the way, if the point you're trying to make was Iranians elect their leaders and the policy of the Iranian people, that is a very strong case against allowing Iran to have nuclear weapons or even to exist as a regime. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, even if Iran had like prime minister, the question would be like, okay, but do they actually do something? Do they have like any position? Do they like with the president? And even then, like we are talking, even when it comes, I believe to be able to even run as president in Iran, don't you have to have permission from the Ayatollah? Doesn't he approve the list of people who run for president?
Yeah, and you remember Ahmadinejad? Well, he's before your time, Daniel, but he was like the most hard line of presidents that I remember, and he's not allowed to run because internally he wants to do some reforms that are too secular. He still wants to kill all the Jews, of course, but it's Iranians would be less uncomfortable supposedly under him. At least I guess that's how the Ayatollah sees it. So yeah.
Yeah, so again, it like really like the idea that country having election is enough to like make sure that everything is going well is ridiculous. The development of elections, of understanding elections, of how to run them, of separation of powers, of the separate judiciary, separate like there's like so many things that go into like making a proper regime. The fact that you can just you know, Syria can just have an election and suddenly like everything is fixed. And even that, even if you have like a proper system, the development of like the proper decorum of acting in parliament, of how to like properly go through legislation, go through like discussing things with experts, discussing things with like legal experts on like how this applies in other cases, that like that takes work. People are acting as if, and this is what happens. I think what happened in the West, and you see that with Anna Kasparian to some extent. People think that life in America is how life always was and how life always will be. No, it's an achievement that took thousands of years in the development of like legal scholarship and hundreds of years in involvement in like development in America alone. The idea that this is how it's everywhere is ridiculous. I don't know how much like Anna traveled because I know she's Armenian, but I don't know if she is like she was just born to an Armenian family in America or she if is actually from Armenia. Somebody says 1,000 years question marks. Yeah, I mean, when was like ancient Greece? We are going back more than 2 millennia, and that's when the sort of the first foundation started. And if you go even to like older, like ancient Mesopotamia, right? That's when you had like sort of like first even legal ideas. So yeah, it's a big development, and this achievement is like thrashed by these people.
Yeah, Stuart.
Yeah, I know. I'm so glad that Daniel brought that up because that I think that that's missing in not just her analysis, but really I think most people just don't understand what an achievement modern democratic society is, and they think that the only thing that is important is the democratic part. That oh well, there's elections. That is one part of a vast system that literally has evolved over thousands of years and is an incredible achievement. And the idea that you can just pluck out that one part of it and have that be enough to have any kind of decent society is absurd, as we've seen, because it doesn't work. It is a free elections are certainly an important part of a free society, but they're just one part. And if you pull that out in isolation from everything else, it can't work. It doesn't work.
The pro Ayatollah person in the chat, I just have to say, they point out very importantly, although I think they pointed out for different reasons, Khamenei doesn't have an international warrant in ICC court. Yeah, that shows you the worth of that court, where you can get a warrant if your country has been attacked, civilians have been targeted and slaughtered and kidnapped, and you dare defend yourself. But if you're killing tens of thousands of your own people because they don't want to be oppressed, well, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to read any more of the pro-jihad person here. Victor says in the chat, didn't Ukraine give up nuclear weapons as a condition for being defended by NATO? Not sure if this explains anything. I mean, the fact that Ukraine agreed to give up its nukes because there was an understanding it would be defended, and then it wasn't, is a great argument for a nuclear deterrent by countries that aren't, for countries that aren't dictatorships and might want to defend themselves from dictatorships. Again, Anna is talking about a deterrent in situations that, are mostly imaginable because are fully imaginable. They're not actually real. Belgium doesn't need a nuclear weapon to defend itself from the Netherlands. There's no talk about that, and there's no, or from France, which has a nuclear weapon and is a neighbor, and you know, there's not a risk of that at the moment. The only times we talk about it is when one of the countries is a dictatorship. So yeah, it does explain everything. Thank you, Dad, for the super chat, and more Anna. Oh yeah, we have a lot more Anna and not a lot of time. But Daniel, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I would just mention when it comes to because somebody says Ayatollah doesn't have ICC. Uh, Iran is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, so they technically can't. They technically cannot even have ICC go after them, since Iran doesn't even is not a signatory to the body that it pertains to. Which of course Anna won't bring up as like Iran is treated differently than other ones. Now you might say that, but wait, Israel is also not a signatory to ICC, but has warrants against them, and it's like, you silly goose, don't care, don't bring that up. We don't deal. Those things don't matter when we deal with Jews.
Moria.
I'd like to prevent that from happening, actually, to be honest. Now, some might disagree with this whole theory, but I want to give you one more statement or one more excerpt from the newsletter, in which Carlson writes that defending the Iranian government is not the purpose of raising these points. And I believe him on that. I've got no love for the Iranian regime. All we want to do is introduce America's national conversation to a different point of view. Maybe the premise of why the US must bomb the Islamic Republic's physics facilities is false. Maybe other parts of the official narrative on the Middle East aren't true either. So let's talk a little bit about nuclear peace theory. I learned about it in grad school. I thought it was really interesting, yes, provocative, but honestly, it made a lot of sense to me. And one of the political scholars who's kind of known for his work on this theory is a political scholar by the name of Kenneth Waltz. He's the founder of structural realism. So real quick, what is the nuclear peace theory? It's also known as nuclear deterrence. So nuclear deterrence refers to a principle in international relations where the retaliatory potential and destructive force of nuclear weapons prevents nations from launching a nuclear attack. Again, the thought of mutually assured destruction prevents rational actors from actually using those weapons, right? Using the nuclear bombs. So if you know a country has the ability to destroy you, you are less likely to attack, or at least reconsider or think carefully through the possibility of attacking. So the theory's roots are in the Cold War era, when a third world war was averted despite tensions between the United States and the Soviets, right? The USSR. So one of the main proponents of the nuclear peace theory is Kenneth Waltz, the founder of structural realism. And according to a 2011 article from the Georgetown Journal of International Affairs, as a structural realist, Waltz's beliefs are centered on the conception of states, meaning countries, as unitary rational actors.
Pause.
He argues that states seek.
Okay, no, seriously, no. Yeah, actually, do you want to leave that up there? Yeah, let's leave it up there. Look, okay, actually, let me reread that sentence and then we can remove it for the time being. As a structural realist, Waltz's beliefs are centered on the conception of states as unitary rational actors. Anything that comes after that doesn't matter. Look, the three of us, as much as we try, can never perform mental gymnastics on that level because we're not, Olympic level mental gymnasts. You need to be a full-time academic for that kind of crap. States, okay, your starting point is not just complete bullshit. It's look, Iran states repeatedly, even though it doesn't say we are building a nuclear bomb, it states repeatedly what result they want to see in the world that a nuclear bomb can bring them. The idea that any random politician who happens to take over a country in any way is therefore automatically a rational actor. There is not just no basis for that, there is tremendous amount of reasons to think otherwise. And yeah, for me, this is reading that and bringing that up as your argument also tells me what these people keep telling us, which is their opinion of the audience is so incredibly low that they think, okay, we're just going to throw that out there, and people will be like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. It's an academic, so
Can I
Stuart.
just give? Can I just really throw one clarification? When it comes to rational actor, or the concept of rational actor doesn't mean sort of Ayn Rand's understanding of rational, or like objective rationality. Rational actor just means somebody who is acting on behalf of things they believe in, basically are acting according to their beliefs. So if Iran is a rational actor, if they believe like a suicide bomber can be a rational actor because his desire is to kill himself and take a bunch of people with him. That's a rational actor. If suicide bomber kills himself like by blowing himself up and taking a bus of people with him, that's a rational actor. So like we are kind of supposing that Iran wants to, that their goal, their desire is actually to want to stay a unitary state that survives into the future. And I have more things to say, but I just wanted to throw in this one clarification.
Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can debate on, how you would define a rational actor, but
this is how like people. I think it's like a wrong concept because it's like very. I don't think it's a good concept, but that's how
it's not. No, you're right. But the fact is that, I mean, yes, I guess you could say that mutually assured destruction worked between Russia and the U.S. during the Cold War, but I don't think that is an argument that you necessarily could apply to all the leaders and the countries in the world, especially when some of them are demonstrably nuts. I mean, we have people that are really well, I mean, the whole ideology in Iran is crazy by any rational standard. North Korea, their whole communist ideology is nuts. So depending on those people acting in any kind of self-interest, I just don't think that is in any way something that we should stake our survival on. I think that would be suicidal on our part to count on their rational interest in surviving. I don't think that that's true. And then the other thing that you brought up is that there was reason to believe in during the Cold War that if Russia had launched a first strike, that America would retaliate. But since then, America has repeatedly demonstrated that we are a paper tiger, that we don't respond. We don't, we are willing to turn the other cheek over and over and over. So that whole conception that, well, we can't, they wouldn't strike first because of the fear of retaliation. It's like, I don't know. Would we retaliate? I'm not sure. I mean, it depends on the context, but yeah, it would if Russia dropped a bomb on Kiev, would America drop a nuclear bomb on Russia? I doubt it. I think we'd all be like, oh, that's horrible, that's terrible, let's condemn them, let's have sanctions. But would we drop a bomb? Would we say that NATO should drop a nuclear bomb? I have no confidence that that's what would happen.
Yeah. Also, in what way did mutually assured destruction work during the Cold War? I mean, compared to what? Compared to if America had immediately after World War II said, okay, Soviet Union is going to be a threat. Let's topple it quickly before they steal the nuclear secrets in like 4 years. Um, I think the world would have been a much safer place during the time that was the Cold War. So, and yeah, for the people, mutually assured destruction assured that there is no direct war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. Believe me, it did not, feel like some sort of win for the many, many hundreds of millions who were living under communist oppression during those decades.
Right. And the people that died in the proxy wars between the nations,
Yeah,
it's not like there was peace in the world for all that period. Far
yeah.
from it. We
There
didn't
was
have a world
one,
war.
yeah, it prevented one war and one war, which, yeah, if only the US has nuclear weapons, Russia is at a disadvantage. And if you ask me, that's a good thing. Thank
Yep.
you, Gigi Ryder, for the super chat. Gigi Ryder says, Constitution says Ayatollah is supreme leader of Islam. So criticism equals blasphemy equals death. Reform leaders are those allowed. Beliefs, women's hair cause drought. Israel is protected by jinn spirits. And Daniel thinks he's a rational actor, but yeah. By the way, yeah. Again, even with your definition, Dan, even if
That's not my definition. That's a definition of a
that
rational
definition
actor.
in this context, even as that, there is uh, there's a question if a rational actor is somebody that in this context that follows their values, no matter what their values. Iran's values are consistent with the use of a nuclear bomb, actually multiple uses. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Um,
saying. Like a rational act, like there is in the concept of rational actor, the way it's used in economics or law or anything or geopolitics, that there are no values actually assigned to rational part of the rational actor. It's not like rational actor is actually rational in terms of that's why I think it's a bad concept. It's a not necessarily anti-concept maybe would be the closest thing because it's like destroy like it says that logical actor I think would make much more sense because it's a logical actor meaning it acts in terms of its like values or it's like some fundamental ideas it holds. It's not rational because rationality actually involves value judgment. Rational is actually according to certain specific values. So logically consistent or logical actor is actually the term that should be used. That's why I hate the fact that this term is still being used or has ever been used because it's so destructive to the idea of rationality. But here I would be. But by the way, when it comes to again, I hate when people talk about like nuclear attack as dropping a nuclear bomb on a city because it won't happen like that. The way it will happen is, let's say with Russia specifically, the way it will happen is Russia will send the drones into Poland. Just take them a little bit off course, which is what is happening right now. Then it might be something like maybe unfortunately there was a strike close to the Polish border, or because that's what we are dealing with Ukraine specifically. Then it might be, oh, maybe one of the planes just went into the NATO airspace for a little bit. But let's not go crazy about it. Then maybe not necessarily a nuclear weapon, but something like a nuclear weapon will be deployed on like an empty field or on like a railway or on a military site or something among these regards. And with every single of these steps, we'll say, oh, well, let's not escalate it. Let's not go crazy. The dropping a nuclear bomb on a city, I don't think will ever happen because by the time we get to that part, where the next step would be we drop a nuclear weapon on a city, by that time that country would probably be taken over because we already compromised on so many different steps that we basically allow the complete takeover of a certain. So you'll never actually probably have to drop a nuclear weapon on a city because by the time you get there, that country has probably already given up from the amount of concessions we have given to it. And separately, even when she's talking about nuclear theory, I'm wondering if the person who developed this theory even would agree with Anna. Because even then, when it comes to the nuclear peace theory, it's countries do not use nuclear weapons against each other because they don't want the other guy to use nuclear weapons against each other. The same could be said, by the way, about like different like chemical weapons. Like we don't use chemical weapons because we don't want the other guys to use chemical weapons, or certain understanding of we respect like the health sort of like the medical staff, and do not attack like medical staff or medical vehicles because we don't want the other side, or we have certain respect for like weapons or the prisoners of war because we want the other side to respect prisoners of war, which by the way none of those actually apply to Hamas, funnily enough. So we can see how that really goes. So even then we won't use nuclear weapons, but we will use every other weapon. Like that's still on board. Pakistan and India in the conflicts against each other in the last, I don't know, century or whatever. Yeah, they didn't use nuclear weapons against each other, and they killed thousands of, if not tens of thousands of people from each other's side because they are still at conflict. They simply do not use nuclear weapons. So even like the theory, I don't think even theory says that two countries that have nuclear weapons never go to war with each other. It's just they never use nuclear weapons against each other because we have a ton of different weapons where we can kill each other.
Thank you, Apollo Zeus, for the super chat. All right, let's see a bit more of the video and wrap it up.
Survival above all else. This interest in survival leads policymakers and military officials to avoid nuclear war at all costs. As Waltz sees it, no regime can honestly believe it will survive a nuclear war, so mutually assured destruction creates a more secure environment.
Okay, I do.
The reason
want
why
to
Israel
because
does
again,
not
just for a quick comment, more secure environment. She means an environment where there's less likely to be war between countries. She completely leaves out, and it's interesting. Back to the rational actors. You know, what was the
But
word
by
he
the way,
used?
Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis are not state actors as well. Just a random thing to throw at the definition.
Yeah, but you know, the point that this person is when they're talking about security, they're talking about countries being secure as countries, as if that those are the units in a sense, as was mentioned in that quote, not the individuals, not the individuals in Iran who, again, this theory and the advocacy for it is advocacy to make the Iranian regime safer from the threat of regime change. So the, you know, 90 million people in Iran will still live under oppression. If they ever dare object to the oppression they're suffering under, they will be slaughtered by the tens of thousands. And Anna will be very happy to see that because at least Israel is supposedly in a mutually assured destruction situation. Although, again, Iranian values of the values of this regime pursued and followed properly would mean using that nuclear weapon. Stuart.
Yeah, the whole conception is so yeah, I mean it just does not take into account the individual and the individual's rights at all. The idea that Iran should be just left alone to slaughter its own people, that's sort of their business kind of thing. I don't understand that. I mean, you can make arguments about whether or not it's the US's, if it's in our self-interest to do this or that. But how any decent person could just shrug at tens of thousands of people being slaughtered by their own government. Well, she's not a decent person. I guess that answers that. But...
Daniel.
Yeah, I would only say I mean, the amount of non-introspectiveness that, again, I'm psychologizing, but the fact that like Anna doesn't seem to actually, consider what she's saying, doesn't actually like try to like develop some broader understanding. This seems like even the understanding of the nuclear peace theory seems like so surface level, like straight up. I mean, she said she heard about it in grad school. I'm wondering like she read a book about it, or she had like the geopolitics 101 and one of the lectures was like about this concept, because uh, when I get things wrong, and I'm trying to get things generally right, but I'm 23. I'm still like learning about a lot of stuff, especially a lot of history and geopolitical and historical context. And I'm reading book about like every single of these things, because it's generally it's hard to like get one lecture and suddenly you understand like geopolitics or like modern geopolitics or like everything. You need to like read whole dissertations, whole books to like have contextual knowledge of that you can like properly integrate over a long period of time. Anna is 39. She shouldn't be relying her nuclear peace theory, shouldn't be from like a grad school lecture we don't know she took. Like she has, this is her profession. She has time and she talks geopolitics like every day. I think when I look on their channel, geopolitics, I think, is mostly the only. I mean, they talk about like American politics, but they should have. We should have bigger demands for the cultural or political commentators rather than surface level understanding of like basic geopolitical concepts. I mean, I think Razi mentioned like Henry Kissinger. From all his faults, at least he had like a developed, like some developed school of thought for how to deal with political situations, if not completely corrupt and wrong understanding.
Yeah, developed an evil, school of thought. But unfortunately, I think we've already talked about Kissinger, right? We did, at least, I
Yeah,
think
when he
when he
died.
died, it did show. But yeah, look, there's more to that clip. I want to say a lot more, but we are over time, so I'm gonna go to Stuart. Parting thoughts, and where can people find you?
I have a Substack, stuartmargolis.substack.com. I'm also on Facebook. Um, and yeah, my parting thought is that, of course, our commentators should be better than this. But unfortunately, she's not alone. In general, the level of commentary in our culture has declined so substantially since Kissinger. As bad as he was, I don't think he was a superficial thinker in the way that I think almost everybody involved in politics today seems to be. I mean, present company excluded, of course.
Thank you, Gigi Ryder, for the super chat. Gigi Ryder says Ayatollah Khomeini said 50 million Iranians killed is acceptable to maintain power and spread Islam on earth. Acceptable to the Ayatollah, maybe
By the way, that's a
preferable for
rational
Anna.
actor there.
Yeah. Parting thoughts, and where can people find you, Daniel?
I already said my parting thoughts, but you can find me on my YouTube channel, A Damned Dan.
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. The Daily Objective and the reality show return tomorrow. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody, for watching this longer than usual and could have been much longer episode of the reality show. We'll see you back here tomorrow.